So how's about a rundown of my past few months away? Lost Bettina, moved to Connecticut, scheduled SRS with Saporn in Thailand for December 23rd, and possibly getting a new roommate. I still need to figure out my sexual preference though, and so far, my preference is still everyone. Men, women, or both. After I get my vag in December, I'm seriously going to need to get it registered because I plan on getting into some major trouble with it. And since I'm pretty much expecting to be unconscious on December 24th, I'm asking Saporn to wrap a bow around my waist so that when I finally do wake up, there'll be a present on my lap. Currently living in total stealth. Almost. I told one of my new roommates of the three. We just got to talking. He's pretty cool though. And you know what? Stealth is not all it's cracked up to be. You still have this huge secret. Yeah, there's some peeps that you just don't tell. Like my other roommate, for instance. Him, I just gave a back rub to in order to get him to help me paint the kitchen. He thinks I'm the coolest chick in the world. Very macho, and a definite no-no for telling. He's 33 years old, but has a girlfriend. I also live with a 21-year-old girl who's never home, but she too simply thinks that I'm just another fucked up chick, so we're cool as well. Then there's the other 33-year-old, the hermit, and the one who knows about me. The day Bettina left me, he and I just started talking, and I told him that I might eventually date a girl who had a sex change. I was probing him. Not anally. Then he started asking all tons of questions, so I purposely released a little too much information on the subject until he finally asked that if I had been born a girl. I just looked up at the ceiling, smiled. He was in complete disbelief. And now we hardly ever talk about it. He likes the image he has of me and doesn't want to change it. Yeah, unfortunately, Bettina ended up leaving me. I don't think that either of us realized it at the time that neither of us were lesbians. True, we were lovers and close friends who shared an awful lot of time and experiences together, but this moment was inevitable. It simply dawned on us that we might just be staying together for the sake of staying together. For me personally, both my fantasies and my sex drive were now in the dumps. I could almost remember not wanting to fantasize any longer. Rather, instead, I desired new experiences in this body and life I had created. I wanted to get out of the house and meet new people and gather fresh memories and create new fantasies. Bettina also hadn't been working, which at the time really upset me. However, knowing the way things are about to turn out, I can't really blame her. She had no friends of her own in Connecticut, was stuck in a place she had no clue where anything was. She must have been miserable. I didn't have to return to work for the first week, so we spent the majority of that time repainting our bedroom my favorite color, lavender purple. Originally, the room was this childish yellow, and oh my god, then there was the bathroom. I don't know what kind of crackhead was living there before us, but he'd painted it this obscene orange red. Even the ceiling was highlighted. It was like walking into a freaking nightmare, so we hastily painted over that with a color we thought would be similar to a light lime, which actually turned out to be this obnoxious neon freaking green. Still, it was so much more tolerable than that orange, so we said to hell with it and left it that way. I eventually wanted to redo the kitchen as well because the paint was falling off. The place was kind of a mess. Once all that was taken care of, we used the rest of the time to actually settle in, and it was during this process which Bettina finally told me that this wasn't for her. I can still see and hear her standing there, telling me that she'd help me unpack, but was then returning to New Jersey. Despite how little I showed I cared for her at times, I was, in fact, heartbroken. Deep down inside, I knew we both deserved to be happy. Love doesn't necessarily die, but sexual attraction, emotional compatibility, and relationship functionality can and often do fade over time for a lot of people. Our breakup was a necessary regret, and I truly do regret hurting her. Though I do not regret cheating on her, what I do regret is the way she learned of my dishonesty, and further learned of my cheating on her beyond Florida. Those other incidents were inexcusable. I regret lying to her, and I regret all the mean things I said to her about our marriage being nothing more than a contracted relationship. I simply regret hurting her feelings and breaking her heart. She gave so much of herself and tried so hard to make it work, but I was too preoccupied with my transition and trying to pay for it, not to mention my constant desires to experience things on my own terms. I had my own agenda, and I often forgot to include her in that. There's no other way to describe how I wronged her, and that's why I say I'd rather end my life than live with so much as another single regret. Bettina will forever have been the better half of our relationship, and I hope that I've proven so in the way I've told our story together. So at only 24 years old, the government had paid for my move 100%. I was fully relocated to Connecticut, where I'd spend the better part of my mid to late 20s. Oh shit, I forgot. I'm 31 now. Oops. I mean where I spend the last of my youth. Being 30 sucks, especially after the life I've lived. Anywho, so I was now living alone in Connecticut, less a basement hermit, an absent-minded, never-home, recovering drug addict, and a hot guy I often wished was around more than at his girlfriend's. I was now in a land where no one knew about the old me, less a few work transferees. I was basically given a clean social slate. I would soon learn that Connecticut has a much more private and professional setting than New Jersey, inhabited by a whole different slew of people, the fun ones often remaining hidden in the woodwork. I was to continue my therapy with Sue via phone sessions for the remaining 5 months before my SRS. I even got myself another local therapist to now discuss life living as a girl. Having a counselor is always a good thing, regardless of the subject matter. You're paying them to listen and respond to your thoughts. It's all about you when you're in a session. Granted, you're in essence paying them to be the close friend that you're most likely lacking, but it's still a healthy feeling to be able to do so. I'd like to say that there would be no further incidents between now and the point I took off for Thailand, but you know me. And as for my trip, the plane ticket alone had cost me a small fortune, while the surgery itself wasn't even 15,000 bucks, being blindly sent overseas in $5,000 increments. The surgery was scheduled for December 23rd, and my plane was set to fly out on my birthday, December 17th. It was to be the ultimate present to myself, the day I was to be reborn. I was a little worried about making my deadline, however. I slightly remember doing the math once, and possibly coming up a few grand short. However, fate was always on my side, as it seemed, and allowed for an event which ultimately put my bank account into the positive. See, because I was still a little unfamiliar with the area I was now living, I used to check on my RX-7 first thing each sunrise. It was a quiet neighborhood, and I didn't really have anything to worry about, but still, that car was my child. And one fateful morning when I opened my eyes, my friggin' kid had been abducted. I looked out the window to see it wasn't there, so I stormed out of the house in my nightgown and looked up the hill. It wasn't there. Then I looked down the hill. There it was. When living in Naugatuck, Connecticut, you quickly learn to despise the gigantic mountains that most of the neighborhoods are built upon, especially in the winter. Well, my car had just rolled down the incline and hit a parked truck some 10 houses down, and this isn't a little driveway ramp I'm talking about here. This was a friggin' black diamond ski slope. So I ran outside, got my keys, made my way down the ravine, still in my pajamas, and it just had to hit on the front bumper. Of all the places, the friggin' front bumper. You know, the one made from hardened fiberglass, the one I had specifically ordered from Japan. Although I brought my tools and such with me to Connecticut, the work involved in fixing the fiberglass would have been extensive to say the least. And with my SRS still a few grand off from being paid, I did the unthinkable. Again. Just like that, I called up the dealer in New Jersey whom I'd originally bought the car from and asked if he'd buy it back for the same 5,000 bucks, as well as throw in another car which I can use to get back and forth to work. Considering all those mods I put into the RX-7, it was an easy sell. Besides, the dual exhaust I had installed, And I mean the true dual exhaust, as in two straight pipes coming right off the engine with no catalytic converters, often shooting fire out of the tailpipes. Point is, the cops were beginning to harass me about it, and there were already a few bothersome tickets in the glove box because of said flaming exhaust. Not only that, the RX-7 is a touchy car to begin with, and if anything happened to it at this particular time, like drivetrain-wise, I would have been screwed. There was absolutely no room for money to be spent on repairs, so after some careful contemplation and a few tears, I made the call and got my $5,000 and some other hunk of shit. My story now takes me to work, where I'll meet my new boss, new coworkers, and eventually have that new companion move in. There I am in my lab coat, getting ready to take on a whole new set of responsibilities. My new title was Trainer of Manufacturing, upgraded from Production Coordinator. Basically, I was to be the dean of an in-house college, set to write, design, and run an entire curriculum from scratch on the processes of the various product builds. I was responsible for making sure that 150 new employees all learned the procedures correctly through 5 different engineers. The position they gave me didn't even exist before my arrival. It was catered to me and the task I had at hand. I was honored. The company was still building the same missile guiding systems as before. That hadn't changed. And for a while, I was even back on the bench. The position would only last a year, ultimately leaving me to once again find myself doing menial tasks or taking care of paperwork. At least the New Jersey plant had informed Connecticut of what I was going through so that I could keep my appointments and such, and it wasn't going to be much longer before my original boss made his way over as well. However, he too had been moved up title-wise, and I would no longer be seeing him as much, so instead, I was given a new person to answer to, Boss Number 2, as we'll call him. In a way, I looked up to Boss 2. He was hard to please, and I always felt challenged in his presence. I'd even go so far as to say that he intimidated me, but that's not to say I wasn't happy in such a situation. In fact, I kinda liked it. He always expected perfection, deadlines were to be met, and he needed people who could think for themselves. It's a little hard to describe exactly how he'd make you feel if you failed to meet a requirement, but it wasn't good. He had an aura about him that was very different from what I'd grown used to. Dare I say, something about him may have even turned me on. Not sexually, but in a different way. In fact, I can proudly say that in this Connecticut facility, I wouldn't pull any of that fucking my employees crap. This place was so different from the plant in New Jersey. They were heavy on ethics and conduct, and both were strictly enforced. Whereas in New Jersey, everyone basically got away with everything. And speaking of my coworkers, there was something entirely different about the way they treated me here. I was actually being treated like a female for the first time, not like the guy who became the girl. And with this new type of interaction also came a very different form of report. Dare I say, I no longer felt the same kind of respect I once commanded in New Jersey. True, they treated me as a woman in charge, but for the first time, it also felt as if I was frequently second-guessed. Back in New Jersey, no one ever questioned my judgment. I don't know if these actions towards me were simply because I was new and had yet to prove myself, but even as I'd later learn, long after establishing myself as capable, that sense of respect, for lack of a better word, would still remain unchanged. It seemed that people didn't have the same sense of confidence in me that those in New Jersey had, and in a small way, it was sort of liberating. After having interviewed so many women when I first came out, this was exactly the kind of treatment most complained about. At least for the time being, though, I didn't mind.